Good evening. My name is Audrey Hepburn, and I'm going to be helping you today on your posture. You see, as a ballerina, I must insist that all ballerinas have good posture, not only because it facilitates one's dancing, but it also facilitates one's own spinal health throughout life. So, to begin, I'm going to be starting with the basics. First of all, I do notice that your shoulders are a little more shrugged, they're a little more slumped. For that, we're simply going to be working on you remembering to maintain your posture with your shoulders wide apart, quite a distance, and then to the back. Not so much as to cause an arch in your spine, but enough to simply relieve some tension that might accumulate from you weighing down your entire body's weight upon your shoulders as such. Now, the reason as to why most ballerinas have this sort of posture where they keep their shoulders to the back, towards the back, is because ballet was created by a more aristocratic sort of environment. Women back in the aristocracy, or women in the aristocracy, they tend to walk very, very posh-like, very straight in common terms. The reason they do this is because they had very glamorous jewels about their necks. They wanted to show them off confidently and very proud-like. And so if they were shrugged over, of course, they didn't seem very proud of their jewels. So they had to stand up straight in order to show the world their jewels. Now, for this exercise, let me simply look at my textbook to see what we should do. Well, all right. Okay. Now, for this exercise, I'm simply going to be asking you to clasp your hands before you. Exactly. Now, the same way you're clasping your hands before you, I'm going to be asking you to simply return that clasp to the back as such. So, try clasping your hands towards the back and allow yourself to simply stretch out that way. Simply pull the fist that you have here as far back as you can and then tilt your chest towards the front. If that makes sense. I would illustrate an example, but the wall was preventing me from illustrating the example fully. So simply clasp your hands but towards the back and then stretch out as far as you can, opening up your chest while lifting your chest as well. Okay. I would simply tilt your chest a little more rounded. Let me see. Okay. And now let me see. Fist. I would simply. Can you pull it any further than that? Excellent. Here, I'll hold your shoulders. Simply try stretching a little more. Simply try pulling the fist a little further away from the rest of your torso. Okay. Okay, I think you're done. I think you're all right. Now, you can relax now. For the next part, I simply must emphasize to the fact that always try and keep your posture in mind, so that way you don't simply forget that you're causing damage to the muscles in your back. For instance, if you end up passing by a mirror, simply pay attention to your shoulders and how they are positioned to your neck. The shoulders are supposed to be parallel, I believe it's how you could phrase it. Yes, parallel I assume is a good enough word, but they must be in a straight line from the neck down, so they shouldn't be any further, they shouldn't be any behind your neck rather, and they shouldn't be forward from the placement of your neck. It should be just a straight line down. Now, to move on, and the other thing I wanted to remind you about is simply always keep your posture in mind, as I already stated. whenever you're sitting at a computer, or whenever you're lying in bed, or just sitting in a normal casual affair, perhaps during your leisure time, simply try remembering how your shoulders are placed. Are they more slumped over like this, or are they in perfect condition where they're pushed to the back but not so much as to have an arch in your spine, and to be in line with your neck? So simply try not to go to either extreme, and also try to keep that in mind, as I said thrice now. But repetition does tend to keep things fresh in the mind, so let me simply move on to the next lesson. Don't arch back, raise your shoulders, take in here, put shoulders down. Okay, the next exercise I can participate with you. Now, as I already stated, you don't want to arch your back. You want to keep that in a nice straight line. I understand that women in particular are sort of accustomed to believe that having an arch in your back is the proper way for a lady to walk, and though that is true to form, for a lady to walk properly, it's most encouraged to walk with an arch in your spine. But for orthopedic purposes, it isn't quite all that healthy. In fact, that posture was created during the late 1800s, I believe, perhaps even earlier, where the women were encouraged to walk in that sort of fashion because it allowed the bust to be more exemplified. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that was a healthy posture to maintain. A healthy posture to maintain is simply walking with your spine as straight as possible, not as in, you know, actually straight, because the spine does have a natural arch to it, it does have a natural curve, but to a point where you don't feel like your bust is simply jutting out in angular, you know, positions, in angular, sort of triangular curves. Now, the next exercise we're going to be doing, I'm simply going to be asking you to, let me simply read over my notes. Okay. For this exercise, we're simply going to be raising your shoulders as tight as you can. So as like tight as you can. You're going to look a bit silly, but just raise them as tight as you can. Take an inhale, and then simply lower your shoulders. Don't exhale, just lower your shoulders. And then exhale, of course, because otherwise you would suffocate. But simply do that. Now you try it. Yeah, simply raise your shoulders. Keep them as tight as you possibly can, as high as you possibly can as well. And then take an inhale, and then just lower your shoulders. Don't let go of the breath. And now you may let go of the breath. Now, let's repeat this process once more. Actually, twice more, considering how I repeated myself on my last lesson thrice. So I'll simply repeat this lesson 2 more times, and hopefully it'll stick in your mind. Now, let's simply raise our shoulders as tight as you can, as high as you can, and then take an inhale. And then simply lower your shoulders. And then take an exhale, if you need to, of course. Unless, of course, you don't breathe, but I highly doubt that you can't breathe. Okay. Now, let's try that one more time. You do it on your own, and then the time after that we'll do it together once more. That would technically be 4 times, but 3 times together, and then twice with you just doing it on your own. So, once more, lift your shoulders exactly as tight as you can, as high as you can, and then simply take an inhale, and then lower your shoulders. And then take a breath. Now let's do it together. So, raise your shoulders as tight as you can, as high as you can. Take an inhale, and then lower your shoulders. And then take an exhale. Excellent. Now, while you're doing this exercise, don't forget to not put your shoulders a little too forward or a little too backward, as I already said. It should remain in a line equal to your neck. So don't put it too forward, don't put it too backward. or behind, backward or behind, simply because that would cause pain as well. Whether it be forward or backward, it'll cause you pain, tension, and we don't want tension. Now, don't touch back, put shoulders down. Okay, not a tuck. Oh, and the other thing I must emphasize, you shouldn't tuck your spine in just to not have an arch in your spine, that is customary. As such, when you have an arch in your spine, typically people have an arch that goes like this, as in that their chest goes forward, but there's a large C shape going from the stomach jutting out and then the buttocks sticking out. Now, when people are aware of the fact that that is not quite the healthiest of postures, they tend to do the opposite, which is that they tend to jut out their spine, as in going that way, and they create a C shape with their abdomen, and we want to avoid that as well. Now, just remember to have a straight posture, not going too far back, not going too far forward, as is the rule with your shoulders being, in a line with your neck. A good way to remember it is to simply feel like you have a pole going from the top of your head to between your feet. So simply walk in a straight line and allow everything to be in straight lines, parallel or perpendicular to your neck. So perpendicular, I assume, simply because it crosses through the neck, and then parallel your neck, so this parallel the center of your neck. Now, for the last exercise we're going to be doing, it's going to be a pencil test. Now, this is a very popular test among the ballerinas that I used to work with and still do work with, where we simply put a pencil on your back between your shoulder blades, and all you have to do is simply pinch your shoulder blades and see if you can hold the pencil between them. If you can, that means you have good movement of your shoulder blades, you have good control over them. If you can't quite extend your shoulder blades to such a degree, then that means you do have a bit of exercise and mental conditioning to ahead of you. Now, I'm simply going to be walking towards the back, and I'm simply going to be asking you to simply pinch your shoulder blades together. Don't simply scrunch up like that. Just have this sort of open sort of clavicle area, I assume is what it's properly called, and have that open, but also scrunch up your shoulder. Scrunch up is not the correct term. Extend your shoulder blades is a better term, so as to pinch the pencil on your back. Keep this open, and a better way to simply facilitate this movement is to keep your arms as such, straight across. That way it's like a ballerina position, simply straight across with your wrist as such, very loose but yet firm in its position, and your fingers graceful and ready to coast through whatever movement you decide to go with next. Now, I'm going to be walking up behind you, and I'm going to be asking you to pinch your shoulder blades. Each time I do, simply try to pinch your shoulder blades. If you end up failing the first couple of times, I'll simply keep working with you, but if I see that you're making the same sort of progress time and time again, I'll simply assume that that is at the level that you're at the moment. Now, give me one moment. I'm going to be walking behind you. Now, pinch your shoulder blades. Alright, now relax. And once more, pinch your shoulder blades. Okay. Now relax. And pinch your shoulder blades. Okay. Now relax. Once again, pinch your shoulder blades. Okay, now relax. Now once more, pinch your shoulder blades. Alright, there we go. You didn't do terribly with the test, so I do commend you for that. You did quite well for your first time. I myself couldn't quite keep the pencil between my shoulder blades the first time, simply because no one has the practice of, writing with their shoulder blades. but you did quite well. Your shoulder blades do extend to the degree that it should extend to. With a little more practice, I'm sure you can hold the pencil blade between your shoulders, or shoulder blades. But for right now, the concern was, can they extend far enough? Which they can. So your shoulder blades are in a healthy movement so far. Simply practice the exercises that I taught you for today, and simply continue on practicing good posture, so that way you can either pursue a career as a ballerina, as I have, even though it's not quite a career, it's more of a passionate hobby of mine, or you can simply keep up using good posture throughout your life, so that way there's no spinal degeneration for you down the road. No, I myself tried to become a ballerina when I was much younger, but I had to drop out due to the war raging on at the time, and I became quite ill, unfortunately. I developed anemia, I was quite malnourished, but I still survived, and I learned a lot from my experience then. But unfortunately, it did cost me my career as a ballerina, considering how I was too old to keep up with the much younger girls far ahead of me. So instead I decided to pursue a career as an actress via starting off as a musical sort of actress, one in Broadway, using song and dance, and I got my start starring as Gigi, and afterwards everything else is history. But once more, simply practice good posture and you should be well on your way to having a nice healthy spine. But other than this, are there any questions you might have for me? No? In that case, have a lovely day.